Good morning. Welcome back to the shop. Today, I will talk a little bit about synchronicity or syncretism, which is a rhythm. And it occurs in your own life. Now, I'm going to read a little bit from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. This is page 17 of the translation that I'm looking at. And it is under like the 17 of the first book. Marcus Aurelius, he says, I have to thank the gods that my grandfathers, parents, sister, preceptors, relations, friends, and domestics were almost all of them persons of probity, and that I never happened to disoblige or misbehave myself towards any of them, notwithstanding that my disposition was such, that had occasion offered, I might have acted thus. But by the goodness of the gods, I met with no provocations to reveal my infirmities. It is likewise by their providence that my childhood was no longer managed by my grandfather's mistress, that I preserved the flower of my youth, that I was subject to the emperor, my father, and bred under him, who was the most proper person living to put me out of conceit with pride, and to convince me that it is possible to live in a palace without the ceremony of guards, without richness and distinction of habit, without torches, statues, or such other marks of royalty and state, and that a prince may shrink himself almost into the figure of a private gentleman, and yet act, nevertheless, with all the force and majesty of his character when the common well requires it. It is the favor of the gods that I happened to meet with a brother whose behavior and affection is such as to contribute both to my pleasure and improvement. It is also their blessing that my children were neither stupid nor misshapen, that I made no farther advances in rhetoric, poetry, and such other amusements which possibly might have engaged my fancy too far, had I found myself a considerable proficient, that without asking I gave my governors that share of honor which they seemed to desire, and did not put them off from time to time with promises and excuses, because they were yet but young, that I had the happiness of being acquainted with Apollonius, Rusticus, and Maximus, that I have a clear idea of the life in accordance with nature, and the impression frequently refreshed, so that, considering the extraordinary assistance and directions of the gods, it is impossible for me to miss the road of nature, unless by refusing to be guided by the dictates and almost sensible inspirations of heaven. It is by their favor that my constitution has held out so well under a life of fatigue and business, that I never had to do with Benedicta or Theodotus, and when I fell into some fits of love, I was soon cured, that when I fell out with Rusticus, as it frequently happened, I was not transported into any act of violence, that I had the satisfaction of my mother's life and company a considerable while, though she was destined to die young, that when I was willing to relieve the necessities of others, I was never told that the exchequer, the check was empty. And again, It is they that kept me from standing in need of any man's fortune. Farther, it is from them that my wife is so very obedient and affectionate, and so remote from luxury, that I had choice of good governors for my children, that remedies were prescribed me in a dream against the giddiness and spitting of blood, as at Kayata, by an ointment, that when I had a mind to look into philosophy, I did not meet with a sophist to instruct me, that I did not spend too much time in reading history, chopping logic, or considering the heavens. Now, all these points could never have been compassed without a protection from above and the gods presiding over fate. That's Marcus Aurelius. Very interesting stuff, and I don't know, just think about it in your own life. And, you know, he was like the emperor of Rome. he was trying to set an example. And think about the leadership we have out there in the so-called world today and what you see around you. Peace.